Hello, everybody. This is Jeff here with True Crime, Myths, Legends, and more. I hope you guys are all doing well out there. I'm gonna really quickly update you guys. Sorry I was not here this last Tuesday, where we typically do our live episode. I had my final PT appointment and got cleared, but it just happened to be at the same time that I was doing the podcast. It was the only time that my trainer or my therapist actually had time to see me. So I went there, got cleared, got that all taken care of, and since the week has come, I am also cleared to drive finally. And so it's been a long 3 months of going through, occupational therapy, physical therapy, many doctor's appointments. And so I'm cleared to drive again. And it's interesting. I had some people come to me this last week, and we were talking about everything that has happened. And several of them had strokes as well, and they were like, the one thing that people don't understand about this is that you can look fine on the outside and you could be moving around well, you could be dealing with things well, you may not have speech issues and things like that, because there are many people that have strokes that really struggle with that. But it is really the changes on the inside and your capabilities and what you can do that radically shift. So, it's not always what's on the outside where you can gauge how well a person is doing. There are a lot of other factors that go into that. And on the outside, I'm still walking with a cane and doing my best, but there are a lot of other things going on there. So, for those of you that are out there that know that and recognize that, thank you for realizing that there is a whole host of things that are going on when these life altering events happen. And thank you for recognizing that. And I think we often don't know what's going on with other people, and the things that are happening in their lives, and remaining sensitive to that is really important. So thank you guys. I appreciate all of you that have checked up on me and continue to hit me up and let me know that you guys are thinking about me and sending up some energy for me to continue to get better. I appreciate it. It is always needed, and keep hitting me up. I appreciate it. So anyway, enough of that. Today we have an incredible guest on, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different things, as you guys could see up there. We're going to be talking about cults. We're going to be talking about what it's like to be part of that, what it's like to get out of that, how it is to move through all of the trauma that is there because of those kinds of experiences. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about health and wellness and a whole host of things. So our author, Isabella Young, has written a bunch of different books. One of them called Putting on the Armor of God, a survival handbook for the Great Awakening in New Earth. And we'll talk about that because we are living in a world right now that has seemed to gone crazy. And there's all kinds of things happening, man, it is wild. And how that relates to all of the different things that are going on, all over the world right now. It is a crazy world that we live in. And so, yeah, we should talk. And then she also wrote New Human, New Earth, which offers readers hundreds of natural medicines um, and spiritual technologies to optimize health, expand your consciousness and empowerment. And she has a website, feelingbetternaturally.love, a YouTube channel also called Feeling Better Naturally. And we had a great conversation about grounding and getting out there and really connecting with nature again. Something that I have made the mistake of not doing as I've gotten busy with the business and the podcast and the books and the driving and traveling all over the place. I replaced all of that with, 2 or 3 energy drinks a day and a lot of fast food. And 2 strokes later, I'm realizing that I missed a real serious key part of my life that I had kept up with prior to that. And, thankfully, because I did that, I'm still here. So, making sure that we pay attention to all of those things that are very, very helpful in our lives are important. So, anyway, as we say all that, we're going to bring Isabella on here with us. And as she is patiently waiting backstage, hello, hello.
Hi, Jeff. I'm so grateful to be having this conversation with you after all that you've been through. And in just a short amount of time, here you are back again offering, you're going to be offering information from your own experiences of healing from your strokes. And that's going to make uh, what you share so much more valuable for people.
Yeah, it's funny because I have this background with all of these different traumas and physical abuse and things like that I've drawn from for years and years and years. But like physically, health wise, I have been really great for a long time. And getting to a place where I was not even 10 years ago, I was one of the top endurance athletes in the country. And, now I'm at this place where, that has radically shifted. And ultimately, it is my own choices. I made a lot of choices that were not healthy for me. And I just got into the rut of, it's just so much easier. It's easy to do this and it's hard to do the other thing. And like my whole philosophy before that was always do the harder thing. And I forgot that. And because I forgot that, I have had to have the universe tell me, hey, here's a hard stop. You need to stop and you need to reevaluate what you're doing. You need to remember the relationships in your life. You need to connect with those. You need to hold those sacred. And you need to, connect with the things that you did before that got you so healthy and got you to a place where you could do those things. And so it's been quite the eye awakening experience. And you know, it's so easy to get caught up in everything else and to get so focused on everything else that we neglect the real important stuff.
Yeah, and I think by neglecting the real important stuff that we do end up with health crises, and as a society we end up with the chaos and the bullshit that we can see going on because we have disconnected from what's fundamentally important, and that's our relationship with nature, our relationship with, well, I'll say God. People can use other words, higher power, universe, or whatever. People have just forgotten how fundamental those relationships are, and then of course our relationships with other people, because that's really what makes us human, makes us a healthy, happy, whole human being. And
Yeah,
it's being so forgotten by, well, now we've got 2 generations of people who are relating to life through a screen rather than through the natural world. And that's sickening.
yeah, it is. I've talked about this several times on here because I think it is a real issue. Especially here in the United States. When we look at, we've given our children nothing but a screen and, a way to disconnect from reality. And we wonder why they suffer from being able to relate with one another and, not go out there and relive the things that they're doing on the screen all the time. And, people get injured because of that. And I would love to see a study of the correlation between those two things and the violence that we have here in the states, because it is unbelievable. I think the connection that those two things have, because people are so incredibly disconnected. They're disconnected from everything, that, I mean, there are so many people now that don't even want to leave the house. They have no reason to go anywhere because why do they need to? Everything they have is right there. And, the first time I heard somebody say to me, like like I love Niagara Falls. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And I used to regularly stop there on my way to Vermont, and I would stop there before a big event, just to kind of like get all the energy and the strength from the falls there. And I love that place so much. And the first time I had somebody tell me, "Well, why would I go there? I can watch it on my computer." And I thought, you realize those two things are not the same.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the same experience. My I wanted to go on my honeymoon to Niagara Falls. My wife had never been there, and I wanted to take her there for my honeymoon. Ultimately, we were not able to make that happen at the time, but several years later, I finally took her to Niagara Falls, and we went on the Maid of the Mist and went up there. And I remember the two of us standing there on the observation deck crying, because
Mm.
it was just so incredible. Just the wall of water all around you, and just the majesty of that moment was just undeniable. And I was so glad that I finally got to share that with her, and she got to see that. I've been dying to go back ever since. So that was just a couple years ago, and I'm like, how can I make that happen again? So
I,
give us.
I
Oh,
just
go
want to
ahead.
say that I just want to like reemphasize that point that you made about how when we go out into nature, we're receiving the energy from nature, whether it's the waterfall or the sun or the wind or whatever, and that is something that empowers us and energizes us and lifts us out of depression or whatever. It's essential to be able to receive that energy from all different parts of nature. If it's, people make fun of hugging trees or whatever, that's not something to be made fun of. That's a really important practice to be, as you walk past a tree, touch the trunk, you receive the energy from the tree. That's going to ground you into the earth. And so when we're connected to nature, any of these earth changes that are going on, now we've got a whole lot of solar activity, and the human residence is increasing. So there's a lot of changes going on, not just like within human society, but also energetically in terms of like the planet, our evolutionary trajectory. And to stay aligned with that process, when we're connected to nature, we're not thrown around so much by the changes. We're moving along with the process rather than being, tossed around by it. So I'm just re-emphasizing the importance of getting out and getting into nature. And can you imagine like not going through life and not feeling that the blessing of the rain or the kiss of the sun or the movement of the wind in your hair? It's just such a loss for people who have decided that they're going to get everything they need indoors. It's a great
Yeah.
loss.
So the first time after the strokes that me and my wife went outside, and like we went down to we stopped at one of the parks close by, and we were like walking on the trail, and I had just transitioned from the walker to the cane. And so in my infinite wisdom, I was like, okay, we should go back into the woods. And so like I start walking back there, and I did well. And we get back there, and I was looking for a spot to sit down, like a log or something, just to sit down. And we get back there, and we're standing there. We don't find any logs to sit down on. But we get back there, and we're looking around, and she looks at me, and she says, "I think you should hug that tree." And I looked at her, and I was like, "Get the hell out of here! Like, I'm not hugging this damn tree." And so she was like, "Look," and she went over there and she hugged the tree. And I've never been the tree hugging kind of guy. And I was like, whatever. I mean, I'm down to try anything at this point. And I did. I went over there and hugged the tree, and I certainly felt better afterwards. It was really funny that she was messing with me about the fact, she was like, "See, I told you," and I'm like, "Yes, There is something just about being connected and being back out into nature and receiving that is very, very helpful and calming.
Right.
So
She's a wise woman, your wife.
she is. I am often not very wise, and I don't always listen. So I'm having some time to really refocus that and to be able to pay attention a little bit better. So cool. Well, tell us a bunch or a little bit or a lot a bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Australia in a little country town in the northwest corner of Victoria. And my family seemed fairly normal from the outside, as we had a nice home, and I had a horse and tennis riding lessons, and it was all going well until my mother blew up the family and had an affair, and that sent me on a very dark trajectory, actually, to recover from that experience. And I met a man when I was about did a degree in physical education, and I met this man who was it turns out he was the longest serving Australian soldier in the Vietnam War. He was a Green Beret and with the SAS, and a real warrior in the like physical sense, but he was also a spiritual warrior. And he gave me some books to read that really opened my mind up to there being more to life than what can be perceived through the five senses. Because in addition to being an alcoholic narcissist, my mother was also a raging atheist. So she brought us up to believe that anyone who believed in God or a higher power was like a moron, and that we were superior because we knew the truth or whatever. So I had to go through leaving those beliefs behind and opening up to that there is a higher power. And so through my relationship with Barry, we did some shamanic retreats, and we did tantra and some spiritual practices together, and had some very profound spiritual experiences. And we were both working in the outdoors, using outdoor adventure activities for improving mental health. Or he was working in the corporate area. He was one of the first companies to introduce outdoor adventure activities to companies for team building and communication and all that. And I was working in the mental health field, using long-term outdoor education programs for young people who had their first psychiatric episode. So they had a diagnosis and whatever, and they came on the program, and we did like hiking and canoeing and skiing and all that. And that really gave them, well, a lot of different skills, practical skills, but also gave them self-confidence and helped them rejoin the world after their break. And it's been my dream to live on a farm and be as self-sufficient as possible. So we were working towards that goal. And he went off to work one day, and I got a knock on the door from the local cop and a neighbor, and they told me he had passed away suddenly like that. It was completely unexpected. And we had a 3-year-old son, and I was 3 months pregnant with our second child. And so in that instant, I knew that my best friend was gone, and that I'd never have my dream of a family. And then any ideas of living on a land and being self-sufficient were gone. And I wanted to die too, actually. The pain was excruciating, but I couldn't because I had a child and I was pregnant. So I just didn't feel like that was an option for me. So I spent the next few years just trying to find a reason to live and where to live, because I couldn't stay on the farm anymore. That was chop wood, carry water type of situation, and I just couldn't manage that. So I spent the next 4 years traveling around a lot, staying with friends. I also went to India and spent some time in a couple of ashrams over there. And then I got I'll tell you the whole truth of it. I had a profound dream where I saw 2 shooting stars come in and land over the top of this mountain that I recognized was close to where I was living. And the town was called Healesville, ironically. So that is where I went to live and heal. And then I continued on with my healing work, and I did more shamanic journeying. And I did this course called Dying to Live, which was a week-long preparation for death. We stayed blindfolded and in silence, except when we came together to write our will, our eulogy, letters of forgiveness, and prepare for the death, which was a guided meditation experience on the last day. And I just put my whole heart and soul in this course because I knew in this experience because I knew something needed to shift and change. And during that meditation experience, I remember 2 words, Antakarana and Merkaba, which is a light vessel that we all have that can allow us to travel through time and space. And then I went way out and had this massive out-of-body experience. And in that experience, I met my husband who'd passed away, and one of the Indian gurus who I'd spent time with. And I was told a number of things. And one of the things was to go and start training with this individual who was at that time presenting himself as a trance channel. So I got back, I actually had I went so far out of my body, it took like days to coagulate and come back in again. And once I got grounded, I called him and he said to meet him in New Zealand. He was having a Millennium event. And so I went over there. Then he invited me to his, by this time he was presenting himself as he's actually presenting himself as the second coming. Let's just get down to the bones of it. So he's the Maitreya, he's the second coming, he's the Kalki avatar, he's the one who's come to save humanity. And that spoke to me because I wanted to be able to do something to help humanity, make a difference. So I went to his ashram in California, and we actually ended up getting married after a very short amount of time. And I brought my children over, and within a month I was pregnant, and we were living in his community in Southern California. And that started my, spoiler alert, cult experience, because I wasn't with my guru in his ashram. I was actually entering into a cult. But it took me many years to realize that. And I actually didn't really realize that until he had my son murdered to prevent being exposed as a pedophile and a rapist. That was like 7 years of living hell, where we were at his, being controlled by him every waking moment. And it never felt right to me. Even right from the start, it always felt uncomfortable. But I also understood some of the principles of spiritual growth and evolution, that sometimes, it's not always rainbows and unicorns. There's hard work to do. And so I was prepared to do the work. I knew I had issues that had to be worked on. And so I stayed, and well beyond when I should have.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing. We often think that it is, just, this common idea of, it's just weak people that get involved in things like that and get, trapped in this, whole cult lifestyle. And it is so, like, as I've done a lot of studying and things, it is so easy to, to end up being in a situation where those things just progress exponentially, that it is, anyone is susceptible, giving the right circumstances and the right influence and the person who is leading you down that path. All of us have been, have gone, and, whether it's, friends that we've had and chosen the wrong people to be around, that have led us down some difficult and some dark places. Obviously not that kind of path, but it's easy for that to happen. And I watch now, like, for example, my dad, my dad is getting close to 80, and he'll call me up and he'll tell me about, the phone calls and stuff that he gets, and the people that are enticing him to do this or that or something else, and scams and stuff like that. And I don't, I have to, like, hey, you realize that they're calling you about car insurance, but you don't have a car. Like, but it is so easy for a lot of people to get caught up in those things. And very, very smart people that, someone says the right thing, they give you the right information, they're, giving you the right numbers and everything, and it's easy to be misled. And so, and often it is, it's the carrot, on the string, and it's easy to do that. So, I watch my dad, and I have to remind him, because he's a smart guy, but I'm like, hey, like, don't get involved in that, or even being online and talking to people, because you don't know who that other person is. Like, you have no idea, they could be any number of things. And so, I think reminding him sometimes about things like that is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm still judged for the fact I was in a cult. I'm still judged as somehow mentally defective. But then the joke is that, people are in cults of all sorts of forms. So when people say, "Oh, I'd never get in a cult," you're like, "Well, you follow politics. You're in a political party. There's a cult. You follow sports
Yep.
teams. There's a cult." Like even relationships and families can function as a cult, which mine did. My mother was my first cult leader. She had the whole family running like a cult. But what I've come to understand about how we get inculcated, it's from emotional wounds. It's nothing to do with our intellectual ability. It's emotional wounds. And once I got out of the cult, I studied narcissistic personality disorder, and I was able to recognize that straight away in the cult leader. Because, of course, if you think you're going to save the world, you generally got narcissistic tendencies. And so it was all well and good for me to point the finger at him and say, well, he's a narcissist. But what does that mean about me? Why did I end up in a relationship with a narcissist? And what I learned is that I have codependent tendencies. So narcissism and codependency are both self-love deficit disorders. They just manifest differently. So while he's out there pretending to be someone who is not in order to get his needs met, what I'm doing is I'm looking outside to other people to get the reassurance, the approval, the love, and all that I need. So once I realized that, then my job was to establish self-love. I really needed to love myself. And the only way I knew that I had loved myself was when I was out of relationships with narcissists, because he wasn't my last narcissist. It took a lot of years to undo. Well, it was really the damage from childhood. It really had to spend years after affirming, I love myself, treating myself as I would treat myself if I was my own child. And it's a work in progress. It's a deep wound that takes a long time to heal, but it's definitely the self-love that, and just the knowing of me being a sovereign, divine being that gives me the power and also the defense to, never get caught up in a relationship with a narcissist again. And then also to be able to see how cults operate on a like a local level, but also on a global level. Because once I could see how, understand the dynamics of cult, I can see how those dynamics are operating on us as a species, that we are, it's basically a satanic cult that we're all in. All these systems that we trust, like the education system, the government, although not many people trust that anymore, government, we've got the religions and the legal system, science, all those systems operate to keep us in this cult with limited thinking, with that, and they're all like disempowering and trying to control us. And not many people think outside that. Like, who says we have to, it has to be like this? Who says we have to, work 9 to 5 and have mortgages and pay debts? Like, why? And why is to keep us controlled and controllable, to keep us sick and suffering and in fear, because we're not living as sovereign beings.
Yeah, it is. It we often talk about, like, as people, we're all enslaved by something,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, whether it is that 9 to 5 job where, I got to go in every day, I got to clock in, I have to do this, I have to make this money because I have to pay all these bills, I need to take care of these things. Where does that end? And all of us, struggle with that. How do we find freedom from, being enslaved by someone else? And, whether it's working for the mortgage company so that we can take care of the house and we don't lose that, and, you know, myself, being out of work for the last 3 months, it is not easy to figure this all out and to make it, because I remember my dad telling me this a long time ago, and I've always believed it. And I mean, and it's true that, it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. It doesn't matter the radical shift that I've had. The bills keep coming, and the creditors keep calling, and they don't care what I've had happen and what's going on. And, how do I figure that out and navigate all of that stuff? It is very, very challenging. And, that is what keeps us under control. It is why we can't expand and often live out the dreams and the ideas and the needs and the love that we have, is because we're all bound by those things. And there are very few people that ever break free from that. And often, even when you talk about, people that money is no object, but there are other things. There are hundreds of other things that are controlling their life, whether it's image, whether it's, these self-constructed prisons that they're living in. It's why you see, people that have lots and lots of money, there is a very high suicide rate. There is this fear of losing those things that causes all of these other issues, and that is a form of enslavement all its own.
Right.
It's funny. Back to something else you said, because I don't want to forget this. Myself personally, before, there was a running joke before the strokes happened, and it was kind of half serious, half not serious. And I would say, uh, I got big brains, and my head's not big enough to contain all this stuff because I'm smarter than everybody else. And then when I had the strokes, I was in the hospital, and one of the first things that I remember saying is that I said, "See, I told you my brains were too big. They had to kill off a bunch of them. And now I'm 30% lighter, and I'm still better." And so I'm like, man, I was in occupational therapy today, and somebody made a comment about, how well I've done, and, that I've done really, really well, and I'm doing 10 times better than other people. And I'm like, no, please don't say that. I'm trying to break free from some of that thinking that I've lived all my life in. And because, just like you mentioned, I had to work through a lot of trauma from my own childhood. And so as I've worked through a lot of that stuff, those were the safeguards that I put up to to combat all of the negative stuff that was said to me as a child. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've built all these things up, and now I'm still doing the work to try to figure out how to break free from that, because that thinking has now, where it's helped me in business and it's helped me do a lot of the things that I do now, it has also killed all of my relationships. It's killed a lot of the things that I've been able to do, that I should be able to do, because of my own opinion of myself. And, it goes from, yes, I love myself to, I'm putting myself in a place that is unhealthy for me and anybody else around me. So, like, my perspective has really shifted in my own understanding of who I am, uh, which is another unintentional good thing that has come from all of this, because I certainly needed that readjustment, because I was way out of whack.
Yeah, that's profound, Jeff, because the way out of cults and cult thinking is firstly to recognize that there is a cult, that you're in a cult, or you're in some like limited way of thinking, or you have a false worldview or whatever. And that takes work because you have to analyze your, beliefs about what's true and what's not. But if you can't see the cage, then there's no way that you can escape. If you
Yeah.
don't know that you're in a mind prison, you're not going to get out. And that was true for me in the cult. That's really what I came to understand, is that I didn't know I was in a cult, so why would I get out? And it happened. I went along to see this. He'd actually been the cult counselor, in addition to having all these different, because we were so emotionally wounded in the cult, we had to have all, this is the cult leader telling us we've got to have all these different like therapies and to help us because we're so messed up. But there was this one guy who I didn't actually go see him because I was a bit of a rebel. But about 8 months after my son died and was murdered, actually, allegedly, I knew I needed help because once again, I wanted to die. But I had 2 children by this point, so I had to stay. So I went to see him, and when I walked in the door, he said, "I knew you'd come and see me one day. You know you're in a cult, don't you?" And I said, "No, I don't know I'm in a cult. I thought I was in an ashram with my guru." And he said, "Go home and Google cult characteristics." So sure enough, I go home and I get this list of cult characteristics: the charismatic leader who's the arbitrator of truth, who controls everyone's everything, what you eat, where you sleep, how much you sleep, who you're in a relationship with, it, whether or not you have sex. Everything was controlled. All our time and energy was controlled. And then there's the tactics like gaslighting, which I came to understand it comes from a 1930s play where the husband was making his wife feel like she's going insane by adjusting the dimming of the gas lights before electricity. So there was a lot of gaslighting in the cult, where basically I lost my mind. I lost my ability to trust myself, because he would always say, "Oh, we had that conversation," or "You said this or that." So every day the gaslighting. And then there's also like the psyops, the psychological operations, where he would set up these just bullshit situations. He told everyone that our daughter was the reincarnation of Lord Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, and she was here to remove obstacles, or just all this mind fuckery day after day after day. And so once I realized I was in a cult, that's when I knew I had to get out. And then that wasn't so straightforward either, because he continued to use like blackmail and serious mind games with me. He wasn't going to let me leave and take our daughter, which he had a legal right to stop me moving within a couple of hours. But he also said if I left him, I'd be turning my back on God and my purpose here on earth, and my screams would reverberate throughout the universe when I died at the mistake that I'd made. And that's still, because I'm very devoted to my spiritual growth and evolution, and it is my intention every day to offer my life in service to God. So he got me there as well. And I know he eventually let me go, because he was going to have another death on his hands, and he didn't want that. So I was able to escape to Hawaii, and then my healing journey started then. And so firstly have to recognize the cult, and then there's then we can start to extract ourselves. And most people don't see that's this society that we live in functions like a cult. And there's a lot of reasons why too that people can't see that. It's not just because once I recognize that my worldview was wrong, then basically the whole worldview fails. And then I'm like, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing? Like you too now, you've got a new worldview. You have to reconfigure the world anew. Who are you now?
Yeah.
And that's very challenging, and takes a lot of courage actually to work through those times when we have to take a really good, hard, honest look at who we are and where we are and what we're doing. So yeah, that's the first step in getting out of a cult, is recognize that you're in one.
Yeah. It's it one of the things that because well, I haven't even told you this, and my listeners know this. Uh so I also uh pastored for a very long time. So for 10 years I was doing that. I was standing up in front of people talking all the time, and I still have, faith and all of those things. And I hold very close to that. But I have, there have been many, many struggles. And it's interesting to me that, like you said, that, there are a lot of constructs in our whole society that are very cult like. And a lot of that, just watching TV, right? You watch TV and the commercials and things like that that are all generated and geared to get you to purchase their products, whatever they are. I know right around I was watching WrestleMania this year, and my dad was a professional wrestler, and so I still love watching it, and I think the storylines are amazing, and the fact that people like it is for sure a male soap opera, and so I watch it, and but during WrestleMania this year, there was a sponsor. One of the wing companies had sponsored a ton of ads. I don't know how many millions of dollars they paid for all of these ads. But I'll tell you, by the end, I was ordering on DoorDash some wings to get sent to the house, and they are amazing. They were just as good as they looked on TV. And matter of fact, I just went there a couple days ago and had some chicken wings, and was thinking about how they got me. They got me watching WrestleMania and the commercials. And I remember sitting there as we were ordering the food, remembering the commercials and salivating at getting these wings. And I thought, wow, like what an incredible emotional like roller coaster that they put me on to get me to that place where I'm now sitting in this restaurant thinking about how you made me feel months ago just to eat these wings. And it is those different ways to influence people that they use, the sensory, the emotional. They put you through all of these things to get you to this place where you'll then take care and purchase their stuff. And I'd probably be 1,000 times better at selling things online if I figured out how to do that. I'm not so bad doing it in person, but terrible, terrible online or outside of that. I haven't figured that out yet. But there are people way smarter than me that do it every single day, and they're just masterful at making it happen. But it is the same thing. You're tapping in to that same mindset in how do I get people to do exactly what I want them to do. And that is something that the snake oil salesman was doing 200 years ago, that they are still doing today to get us all to, whether it's we buy an Audi or we buy a Toyota or whatever, car you want, all the car commercials that are on TV. It is unreal. And not to mention the drug commercials where they tell us the 700 different side effects that all these drugs have, and we still go out and take these things. Like, what? It's so crazy.
It's well, I haven't had a television for 30 years. It's not to say that I watch the computer screen. But what I've come to understand is the television is probably the most powerful mind control device that's been introduced to us. Now we've got the cell phone, which is like a close second. But that television is, I would say, the most powerful tool that those, and I don't know who they are, but whoever's controlling humanity, inculcating us, devolving us, dehumanizing us, and heading us in a really, like technocratic trajectory, that television is like their most powerful weapon against us. It's a mind control device, it's a propaganda machine, and you have just given an example of, and I'm sure most people are aware of the how how they've been influenced. There's lights and colors and flickers, and it's not just a invention that's happened in someone's shed. It's actually purposefully designed to tap into the basic parts of ourselves, our mind, our worldview, and manipulate that so that we do act and think and behave in certain ways, and that is within a box that the television keeps. It's called the box, right? That's a name for the television, because that's what keeps us in the box, where live in a box, watch a box, work in a box, drive in a box, and eventually die in a box. And so for me, I'm moving outside the box. But first you've got to recognize, where the box is, in order to break free of that. But yeah, the television and the cell phone, they're not just inventions. Oh, this is the latest invention, so here you go. These are specifically introduced to society in order to further the plans that are going to, keep humanity under control, enslaved. They're the devices. They're like handcuffs or, jail bars or whatever. It's a mind prison that they create. And that's, you can't see a mind prison. You have to be able to, like, intellectually recognize it. It's not visible.
Yeah. And so, uh, I often try to do my best, especially now with the way that things are in society, to try to stay very apolitical. But one of the things that has been fascinating to me over the last 4 or 5 years, probably longer than that, probably the last 10 years specifically, here in the United States, is to see how they have pitted us against one another and gotten people and used all of these same tactics to get people to create the dividing lines and to go against one another. And, I have so many friends on both sides of the aisle, and I watch them ready to violently go after one another for, you know, speaking whatever truth that they believe. And it's so sad to me to see them do that to one another. No matter what your background is, or no matter what you think about politically, or how you feel, to go after one another and to disown family members and friends and loved ones because they disagree with you on any point, seems incredibly ludicrous to me. And I watch it happen over and over and over and over again. And I feel so bad for those people that are unable to look outside of that and realize that they have bought into the same bullshit that many people buy into when they get involved in a cult.
Yeah.
They're living that same kind of mindset and allowing themselves, even though they want to believe that they are so free thinking and they're choosing to think all these things, but what's really happening is they've bought into someone telling them what to believe, what to think, how to act, who to hate, who to kill. And it's why are you subjecting yourself to that and not like, you think that you are having free thought, but what you're doing is regurgitating the same bullshit that you're ingesting over and over and over again. And it's so sad to me to see people that I really respect and that I really love, and that I have always, tried to listen to, that have gone that way. And although I still respect them, I still love them, I can't also go down that same path. I just can't be in that and go there and uh, fight for a cause that I know that is going to be so damaging to our entire society and to people all around the world, that I just can't. I can't do that. There are much better ways to live and interact with the people around us than we are currently choosing to live in.
Well said. Well
Yeah,
said. Divide and conquer, right? It's just it's such an ancient tactic, and it's being used against us. And the
I
joke
was.
is that I was just going to say the joke is with the politics that there's just one party. It's just the lead humanity into a technocratic hell, a dystopian nightmare, and yet people put their whole self into one side or the other, but they're really just heading it both. They're actually, I'm sure that they walk off stage and they're slapping each other on the back behind the scenes because they're both working for the same goal, and that's not in the best interests of us as individuals or as for us as a collective. That's the
For
joke
sure.
that people don't realize it. And all the time and effort that gets put into one side or the other, or even just voting, people think that voting makes a difference. So they're all selected. It's all this theater with actors playing their roles. And once we can see that, then, like you say, we can move away from those, polarized ways of thinking into a much more harmonious and balanced way of being.
Yeah. One of the things, I was just at a big gaming convention, and like tabletop gaming in Columbus, Ohio. And I created a game, and my subject matter is fairly dark and grim. I mean, I have a true crime podcast, and so that is fairly grim as well. But one of the reasons for me creating any of that was really spreading awareness and getting people to understand the psychology and the types of people that we're dealing with out there all the time, and these very, very uh, bad mindsets that we deal with on a regular basis in the world around us. And how do we recognize that better? How do we get ourselves away from that? How do we develop things that can help those people, that and get them the help that they need before they do things that end up hurting our society and killing one another, and all kinds of things. So anyway,
Oh, that
we had
sounds important.
a one of the things we talked about, because there are a lot of people, specifically in the gaming community, that look at me like I'm a ghoul, and that because the game has killers in it, and they're all real people, and they look at that, but at the same time, at the very exact moment, there are people all over the convention center that are buying manuals about war strategy and all of these things. And I'm sitting there, and these are the same people that are like, what you're doing is not good, but you're perpetuating the same thing that has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, this line of thinking, and perpetuating that. Where is it that you're helping this continual problem that we have of the warmongering and going out there and destroying other people for our own self gain? And there are many, many games out there, that is solely based on that. And I sit there and I'm like, uh, it's so difficult for me to understand sometimes, because I put a name and a face with the person. But I did that for a reason, because I want people to understand. I don't want it to just be a game. I want people to understand that this is real life, This is reality. This is something that is not connected to just, a face on the screen or a documentary or something. I want you to have an interaction. I want you to see these people. I want you to understand that this is real life and there are real people out there that are doing these things so that you can be safer and you can recognize these things before they potentially happen to you. And so I'm always trying to that is the narrative that I'm always working with. It is what I do with the podcast. I want people, it's why we talk about alternative theories and all of that stuff, not because it's just something interesting to talk about, but because there is truth everywhere, and often we neglect to look at the truth, and we would rather stay in our comfortable little box rather than go outside of that and understand other people's perspectives and see the world for what it is, so that we can be healthier and happier and safer ultimately. And so I'm always constantly trying to do that, whether it's with the games that I produce, the books that I produce, the podcast. I want people to have an experience with that so that they can see the things around us, because I believe personally that that is very important. Awareness, just like you already said, is the number one key, right? You have to know. If you don't know, then you're always going to be stuck in the same position and you're never going to get away from that.
True. And for me, the way out was to continue to expand my consciousness. And so taking steps to, we talked about spending time in nature. So I'm then open to the field, the information field that's beyond the computer screen. And then the other main way that I expand my consciousness is, and I mentioned it to you before, is the practice of sun gazing, where I take in the life optimizing information of the sun as it just rises above the horizon through my eyes into my brain, and that expands I don't know exactly what it does, but it expands my consciousness and continues to do so. And I think that, like what you're saying, is like to bring a wider perspective to people so that they can see the limitations of their current ways of thinking and being. It's really important. The other ways are, there are breathwork practices that can expand consciousness, and there are sacred plant medicines, entheogens, that can expand consciousness. And I often think that might be our best hope, because that consciousness can expand in an instant with a sacred plant medicine journey. And there's a lot of shamanic work and whatever that can also expand consciousness. And I think that's really an important part of evolving and healing and growing, is to continue to expand in our consciousness. And just in addition to the light from the sun, there's also the light from the moon, the light from the stars, light that glitters off water, and the light from crystal prisms too, all like forms of natural light, firelight, candlelight. If you do like fire gazing or candle gazing, all those forms of taking light in can continue to expand consciousness, and that changes our perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, I have the ring light consciousness shining me right in the face. But like, I always think it's funny because it reflects on my glasses, and I'm like, I always wonder, like, even sometimes in my eyes, just on my eyeball, my retina, like it'll reflect onto the screen, and I'm like, I wonder how many people are like completely distracted by that little ring, that light source on my eyes, and not listening to a word that I'm saying. They're just like distracted by that thing bouncing around. uh, I think of that probably way more than I should. It used to be when I was standing up and I was doing public speaking, it was the ums and the and the the words and stuff, like how do you stop that? And so I got to the place where I was pretty good at just pausing and not saying anything. And here is one of the things that when you talk about sadly enough, we all fall prey to this cult behavior. And part of that is pausing for dramatic effect and allowing words and things that you're saying to sink in with people and giving that pause rather than filling the air with letters and stuttering or whatever to cause people to then not pay attention and not grab hold of what you're saying. And so it is all trying to have that emotional connection with people and take them through an emotional experience to get them to a point of decision, whatever that point of decision is. And so I spent a lot of time crafting things to speak that way and to talk to people. And, again, deriving directly from the church and all of my training and going in and trying to understand what it is that motivates people and gets them to that point of decision, whatever it is, whether it's to give that extra $5 into the offering plate, or if it's to, accept or come up to the altar and do an altar call at the end of the service, or whatever that is. uh, you know, it's amazing that even in that, where it should be something innocuous, we are all living and continuing to perpetuate those same constructs. We're still, like, I was still doing that during that time to, manipulate people into having that experience. And, often for me, it became a very self edifying thing, because just like everywhere else, whether it's at work, like if you work a job where you are, in the stock market, right? And the stock prices go up and you're making it, there's a lot of self edification that you are the one that did that. And when the stock prices go down, there are plenty of people that blow their brains out all the time because that happens. And it's very interesting how we set ourselves up as people to be, so led by the numbers and led by all of these things. My full time job, when I was working it, is a job that is very led by numbers. You're constantly, the matrix is, hey, are you making more money this week than you were last week? Do you have more sales? Are there more, products that people are using? And it is such a, for me, it's never been a motivator because I don't really care about that. I've never cared about those numbers. What I care about is, often the legacy that I'm trying to leave behind. Am I making an impact? And, you know, I had people come up to me this last week and, tell me how much difference and how much the game has brought their families together. And, they play it all the time and they love it. And, that is more meaningful to me than anything else. I had somebody buy a copy of my book and they went home and they read the first like 3 chapters in an hour or two. And they messaged me the next day and said just how much they loved the book. And it was great. And I'm like, well, that's fantastic. Like, I'm glad that I did something that was helpful to you and that helped you like learn more and dive a little bit deeper into the history, because history is very important to me. I think that if we forget those things and we leave those behind, we continue to have the same kind of bullshit that happens over and over and over and over again because we are unwilling to recognize what our forefathers have done before us and the shortcomings that they've had, and we've not gotten better from that. And so I'm always very much wanting to look and understand those things and to see what happened then and how that affects, my beliefs and my ideas and the direction that I'm going now.
Yeah, thank you for the work you're doing to make people's lives better. Thank you. It's really important to do that work, to make a contribution to the betterment of humanity, however small or big. And that can just be showing up every day and being a good, helpful, kind, considerate person, to everyone
good.
meet, right? Just simple like that. And also what's important from what I heard you just say, how honest you are about yourself. You know, there have been times when you've manipulated people and, you know, done things for your own benefits. That having that ability to be really honest about ourselves and our own shortcomings and things like that, that's important too, because that's how we go on and be able to be a better, kinder, you know, more human person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's interesting to understand or to realize how much those cult behaviors really have a grip on all of our lives.
Yeah.
You know, it literally gets into everything, everything that we've ever believed, everything. And then we go on and we emulate a lot of those things. You know, um, I watch, at work going in and telling people, hey, just to let you know, this year there's going to be a price increase. You're going to go up 54%. And, it's because everything is going up and you guys know you have a business, everything is increasing. So, what can we do to make you feel comfortable to be able to, you're going to have to get a price increase, but what would you be comfortable at? Because the name of the game is increasing profits. So, it doesn't matter whether it's 54%, and they often tell you it's going to be 54% because they want it to go up that much. But if that person is willing to take a 20% because that seems comfortable, we'll take a 20% because that's all positive, right? That in and of itself is manipulative, right? We're doing the old bait and switch and trying to get people no matter what. And when you look at a lot of that cult behavior, it's the same thing. Like, hey, yes, we asked you to accept all of these horrible things, but at the same time, look at the benefits that we're giving you, the love and the acceptance and the community and all of these things, which often keep people involved in the cult because they can't leave. They
Yeah.
can't leave because we're all their friends and all their family, and their whole support system is right there because they've taken everything else outside of the cult away. So now you have nothing if you leave, and you feel like your entire life is gone. There's nothing left there because there is no life without them. And even though you've been forced to accept all these horrible things and all the control and the abuse and everything else that comes along with that, that is far better than leaving and having nothing and having this entire void. Uh, we often all sit in horrible circumstances just because it's what we know, it's what we're comfortable
Right.
with.
Right.
Uh,
They say that the devil you know, right? And people stay in relationships way past when they should have left because of the fear of stepping out into the unknown.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's unbelievable. So, what are some more of those steps you were talking about? We talked about step number one, that you have to first recognize that you're part of a cult.
Recognize you're part of a cult. Then you have to have, like we're just saying, then you have to take the step into the unknown. Then you just got to get out. And I didn't have support from family and friends. My parents apparently went to see a cult expert a year after I left to live in the States, and they never said anything to me about being in a cult. No friends ever said anything to me. I remember one person said, "Oh, you don't need a guru, do you?" And I said, "Oh, I do now, back in my old ways of thinking." So it was important for me to be told I was in a cult so I could take the steps to make the break. And then I needed to do a whole lot of study to understand why it had happened to me. Like I said, so I learned about my codependent tendencies. I learned about cults so I could identify them. And then I had to go through the emotionality of feeling guilt because of my choices. It ended up with my son's death, and my other children were alienated from me. So I had to feel the emotions, literally on the floor, gutted, crying, snotting, screaming, just going through the rage, going through the grief. Because if
I
we,
think we.
oh,
Oh,
we're back.
Yeah, we're back now.
I was just saying that it was important for me to experience the emotions that I felt after leaving the cult. The grief, obviously, because my son had passed, the rage at myself because I stayed beyond, when I should have left, and then so that actually means literally feeling those feelings, crying, screaming, and moving the energy, because emotions are energy and motion. So making sure I'm like hiking and running and sweating, and whether it's in my car with the windows up, screaming, writing, just continue, whatever I want to say, and burning it, but not directing it towards any other person. It's just emotion that needs to move through me, and that's lessened over time. But I still feel those emotions. Sometimes those negative emotions come up, but I'm no longer suffering, because I used to just suffer all the time and want to be dead. Now I can feel the emotions as they move through, but I'm not in the state of suffering. So that's an important part to we can't be bypassing the emotions, pretending they're not there, medicating them, suppressing them, just they have to be felt. Otherwise, it ends up being a very disastrous situation for our physical and mental health. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and then reforming or recoagulating myself. Like, who am I now? What do I like to do? What are my priorities? What makes me happy? So I had to get to know myself again, because I lost myself well and truly. I had no self-respect. I'd lost my connection with my intuition. So I had to learn to trust myself again, because I thought, okay, I got into a cult. I stayed in a cult. How am I ever going to make a good decision for myself again? So I had to learn to trust myself. And that came from listening to my intuition and watching for signs and synchronicities, and then following that instruction or that information. And then that strengthened my trust in myself again. And I've reestablished that now. So if I get an impulse or an inclination or information to go and do something, then I'll do it. And that's really what does build our intuition, our connection to our higher self, and a connection to God. So that took a while to get that into, aligned. And then I had to just rebuild the family, because I had my two older children with me, and we had to just figure out life
Yeah, I know
anew.
one of one of the things that through this whole process that I have found out is that almost all of my life I have been very avoidant of everything. And so I didn't realize this. I thought that it was a great thing because, very rarely do I have anything that ever affects me uh, with strong emotion or anything like that. I really have always allowed things to kind of roll off my back. No big deal. I rarely ever get stressed out about anything. And what I found is that what I was doing was just allowing all that stuff to collect and never
Mm.
really dealing with anything. And so through this process, it has really come back to me, and a lot of those old wounds and things like that that I have never really dealt with have really come up, and I've had to like start really experiencing those emotions and feeling that stuff. And even though I was doing so one of the things that and I mentioned this earlier that I was, at one time one of the top endurance athletes. I used to do these ultra endurance events, military style endurance events. I went to Beijing and I went to Scotland and I was in Vermont several times to do these multi-day events where they do a lot of sleep deprivation, not very much food. There is pretty constant PT, hiking with 80 pounds on your back, and you're doing all this stuff. And, they do that to take away every single thing, like all of the comforts of normal life, and to teach you that you need very little to survive, other than food, water, and every once in a while some sleep, maybe some shelter, and that you could, they give you all these complex tasks and things like that to figure out who you are. And at one time, I was the guy, the male that had done the most of those events in the world, and it was I did that for a lot of different reasons, and one of the main reasons is I was self-flagellating for
Yeah.
everything else that I've experienced in my life. And at the same time, when all of this happened, I realized that that has been one of the anchors that I've been able to use to get through what I'm dealing with now because of the skills that I learned there. So it was both good and bad. I was able to avoid a lot of the things that I had struggled with, but at the same time, I now with a different perspective and a different understanding, I've been able to overcome a lot of those things and see the value in why I did those things and why I made life so incredibly hard for myself. And I messaged the guy who runs all of that. Um, and I sent him a message when everything happened. Joe DeSena, who owns Spartan Race, and I've been friends with him for years. And we had a conversation about all of that. And I just thanked him for, the lessons that he taught me out there in understanding that, what, I don't need any kind of recognition for any of this stuff. You know what I need? Nothing. I just need to be me. That's it. I just need to do what I do. And it was such a beautiful thing that, I remember I was in Beijing, and at the end of the event, they decided that none of the men were going to finish, that they were not going to give us our little medal that we had gone, uh, you know, 10,000 miles to go and win or earn at the end of this event. And I didn't get one. And so there was a lot of arguing. There were many, many angry people. There was this huge outcry afterwards. They had to have a global meeting. I was on the global meeting, and I pretty quickly understood the exercise. I understood that it wasn't necessary. Like, that's not what I went there for. I went there for an experience. I went there to connect with who I was and to figure out more about myself. And the answer is that I learned that. I went there and I figured it out. And there were hundreds of other people with me that could not grasp that concept, that it was the journey and not the little piece of metal at the end
Mhm.
of it that mattered. Like,
Yeah.
it was the experience that I had there with that group of people, and fighting through all of that, that grew me into the person that can now survive all of these things. And I think that it's easy to forget those things, and it's easy to get focused on what we think is the tangible success or whatever that metrics is, to get that, when it's really the intangibles that are important. Like, it's the relationships and the people and the connections that we make that are really the important part of life. And how I went from knowing that to forgetting all about that and going right back to the same bullshit and becoming enslaved again by the same stuff that got me into the problem in the first place, is beyond me. But it seems to be that as human beings, we go in and out of that a lot, and we have our moments where we have clarity and we understand and we see things in a whole new light, and then it becomes very, very easy to get sucked right back in to all of the bullshit, and then get very, very comfortable there because it's easy to be comfortable there, and fall prey to the same thing over and over again. uh, yeah.
You did win the prize.
I did ultimately.
Right.
I ended
You
up getting it.
did. Yeah, you did. And that was interesting what you said, how you could see how your choice to do those ultra marathon events, like, and congratulations to you, because I think I ran and then rode my bike afterwards for a little bit, and that was about as far as I went. I haven't ever done anything that's like ultra endurance like that. So it takes a whole different level of character, really. But what you said about how you were doing them because of how you were like punishing yourself in a way. Well, that's what happened to me after I recognized this after I got out of the cult. My son had been murdered. I felt so guilty. Then I got into other relationships with narcissists, and I was punishing myself in those relationships. I didn't believe I was worthy of any better treatment. And in fact, I thought I should be treated like shit.
Yeah.
So it's important to dive deeper into recognizing our motivations for what we choose, and it's usually got some emotional wounding, usually got some like emotional underpinning in it, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's only by recognizing what those why we choose to do what we do, those and how we're wounded, that we can stop like you were saying, the cycles of those patterns, because otherwise we're continuously run by those subconscious beliefs.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I'm sad about now, with everything going the way that it has, is that in 2019, I did my last event. I did Death Race in 2019 in Vermont. I made it 30 hours and had to tap out because I just could not go on anymore. I ended up I missed a time hack and was disqualified from the event. It is the toughest endurance event in the world. And I had always planned on going back and finishing it. And I really wanted to go back and finish. And, now I don't have that opportunity. Physically, I couldn't even make the requirements. Uh, and so like that is difficult to deal with, because that was a goal that I had, and I was like, all right, a couple more years and I'll be ready to go back and do that. And now I'm unable to do that. But at the same time, the lessons that I was supposed to learn there, I have learned through this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have done that, just in a different form now.
Yeah.
And so, it still remains to be seen how everything shakes out with this. But like, you mentioned earlier, writing your eulogy and things like that. I did that when I went to Death Race. And, actually, it was funny because I got one of those letters back to myself, uh, like a year later. And it was really neat to read through that to see like what it is that I say about myself, and what it is I think about myself, and what should be said. What do I want people to really know, and how that changes over time, what people need to know about me. Or it's fascinating exercises like that, and
Yeah.
how important they are to look back and to see the progress or the changes or the influences that have changed in our lives.
Yes, it is. I think it's important to track our growth over time, because for me, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm in this body and moving through life the way I am. It's so that I do grow and change.
Yeah. So, so one of the things, we've talked a lot about, getting out and to dealing with things and to moving through that process, to really uh, deal with all of the emotions and things like that, and find the healing that is necessary after being involved in that. So, what are some things that can prevent people from going in that direction at all and getting caught up in some of those things? Because many of us like to think, well, I would never get involved in something like that.
Yeah.
And that's not the truth.
I know it's not the truth. Most people are in one sort of cult or another. For me, like I mentioned before, the best protection is to establish self-love and that connection with your higher power, and to make that a central pillar in life, in as you move through life, as I move through life. That's what keeps me empowered and protected. And that's my primary way of operating now.
Yeah.
And the other
Yeah.
ways are to continue to stay like informed, but not over-informed. I mean, I don't really think we're designed to take in all this information now that comes to us from all different ways, usually through screens. It's kind of unnatural. I think it's overwhelming for people, and it's no wonder people feel anxious and feel overwhelmed and feel scared just because there's so much information pouring in and we just can't process it all. So it's important to step back, step away, take a break, have I call it an e-tox, like an electronic device detox. Sorry, my cat's wants to
That's all right. I had my one cat. I've got the screen background on, right, and my one cat was crawling around on the chair behind me. It was really
I just
funny.
got a cat that I just with what, and I found a lot of healing through writing, and so what I've been writing about is the hundreds of natural medicines that we have available to us to keep us balanced and grounded and thriving, and that's from all the plant medicines to the like crystal medicine and anyway, there are hundreds of those. Like even listening to the sounds of nature has medicine. You know, if you can't get outside, then play the running water or chirping birds or whatever. They like speak to our DNA. So that's
you mentioned that. I was going to mention this earlier. It's one of the reasons why if you were to take any blockbuster movie out there and you take out the soundtrack, the movie means absolutely nothing, right? Like, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Love Star Wars. Been watching it since I was a kid. I have my own several of my own lightsabers in the other room, and so like I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I watch all the stuff, but if you take out John Williams' music from any of the Star Wars films, there is no emotional impact at all from those movies. Zero. There is something about sounds and the way that they hit our emotions, and you get the tingly feeling when you hear that. When the scroll happens of Star Wars, I still get all jittery when it happens in the movie on the TV, and it's like it's amazing how that soundtrack of our lives influences us, and they use it all the time. It's used in movies all the time, in trailers and on commercials and TV. The jingles that we hear that evoke an emotional response in us as soon as you hear them. And it's really funny to me that like there are ads, and I've always been a fan of Tony Robbins. And so I followed a lot of that stuff for a very long time. And he talks about, the commercials and stuff from the 60s that we can all sing the jingles today.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe not the kids today, but, those of us that are millennials, and, we all know those by heart because we've heard them so many times, because our parents knew them. And it's crazy that is so buried in our subconscious that as soon as you hear it, there is an emotional response. You feel something. It may not be anything perceptible, but there is a feeling that happens, physically to us. And it is just, it is unbelievable for many people. It's the Monday Night Football theme right here in the United States. As soon as they hear that music come on, they're ready for the game, right? They can't get ready for the game until that music is played. And it's like, just to think about that connection and that connection that it has on our psyche is just immense. It is such a psychological tool that they use to get us to do so many things. It's why, even in churches, back in the day, the organ music, right? As you're walking into church, it sets the scene for what's going to happen through the rest of the service. I never thought much about it until I've been to 12 million services, and I walk in and I hear it, and automatically I'm in a different frame of mind. Mm-hmm. Everything changes. The rest of my life, it's not like that until that moment. And it's just fascinating. There's at Unleashing the Power Within, there's a whole soundtrack that Tony plays, and they do a lot of anchoring in the music. And there are still songs that they played there that when it comes on, it takes me right back to that place, and it takes me right back to that moment of us going through whatever process we were going through.
Hmm.
And it's fascinating how we can use those things, and how cults use those things, how places in our general society use those things all the time to elicit a response from us, to get us into a place that it's either more suggestible or more willing to buy this or that, or do what they want us to do, whether it's flip the channel to the other station so that you watch their programming. And something else I was going to mention earlier is, and I don't know if you guys, well, I mean, you're in the States now, so, but, TikTok is fascinating to me. It's not something that I am a huge, like, I use it because, I have a podcast and I post stuff on there, but it's fascinating to me the people that watch TikTok, and to watch at the same time our attention spans get lower and lower and lower and lower, where it used to be, 2.5 minutes was a good time to have a little commercial or whatever, and now we're down to about, if we can't catch somebody's interest in about 3 seconds, uh, you're not going to be able to keep them. So it's fascinating to see that with this advent of a social media device that is based on short videos and instructional videos. Even there are people that I know that get all of their instruction from everything on TikTok in these videos that are less than a couple minutes long. And I'm just like, they come to me all the time. Well, did you see what did you see that video I sent you on TikTok? And I'm like, when's the last time you read a book?
Right.
Like, and it is just unbelievable to me that, we have a whole culture of people that are gaining all of their knowledge from other people that have no expertise in anything, that are spending 30 to 40 seconds on a social media platform expounding their ideas. And it is why we now have these crazy internet cults that are popping up everywhere, and people are getting involved in. And you know it's amazing to me, like, we just recently, there's been all these documentaries on, twin flames and all these different budding cult operations that are going on. And it's so easy because even though we are very disconnected online, we are all connected online. So there is a whole new market and a whole way to get to a global society online. And if you can find the way to influence those people using all of these cult tactics that we see, it makes it really, really easy to find those people that are hurting, that are struggling with whatever issues that they're struggling with, and give them a home for a little bit of time before you start requiring all the crazy things and the money and whatever else it is that's being required. And by that point, you now have them because you've taken away everything else. And it's just it's so wild to see that popping up. And as a society, we like to think that we're smarter than that. I couldn't get involved in that. And watching these people get involved over and over again and lose everything, and the emotional damage that is done because of that, um, and what that does, reverberating throughout, their whole, generations of people, because some of those ideas they're going to take, and they're going to end up translating that to their own children and their children's children, because maybe they haven't dealt with some of those issues. And it's a scary thing to see all of that happening, and it all being perpetuated over and over again in almost every societal method that we have. Someone is always trying to get what you have.
Yeah, I call it evil genius. Whatever the force is that's controlling our like timeline, whatever, our evolutionary process, it's evil genius that does understand human psychology, human nature better than we do. And I made a choice to even turn my notifications off on my phone because I'm not a Pavlov's dog. I'm not going to be responding just because a beep goes off. I'll respond unless a call's coming in that I need to get that I'm waiting for. But otherwise, I respond in my own time. I don't answer to any. I'm not changing my thought patterns or my whatever I'm doing just because I get a notification coming in.
Here's a good example of that. My wife would get very, very angry at me because I own several businesses. And, I have always believed that, hey, I own my business. I've got to be on it all the time. If somebody sends me a message, I have to respond immediately. I've got to be on top of it because if not, I don't, I'm not going to make that sale and I'm not going to be able to do this or that. And my wife would always be like, Jeff, like you could let that go, like answer it tomorrow. And I could not do that. Like I just couldn't. I had to answer it no matter what that cost. And I have had to come to terms with the fact that that cost is too great. Somebody can wait for my answer a little bit later, or they can wait until, I get up and I have to, go use the bathroom. I can message them real quick or whatever. But it's just been like, I bought into the whole idea that I had to be on call 24/7 because it's mine. And that's not true. Is it important that you take care of those things? Absolutely. But does it have to be immediately? No, nobody does that. And or shouldn't do that. And it's in the long run, it's not healthy. And so it's just it's amazing that it took me this long to understand some of those things and to listen to the people closest to me that were telling me what was right and what I should be doing, and pay attention and to actually hear what they had to say, and of my own bravado not be so stringent to allow that to continue happening. uh, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
there are so many ways that we're distracted from being our authentic, sovereign, divine beings. Just about, I've come to realize that just about everything that goes on the world stage and all these devices are distracting us from that, living our authentically, knowing what's true and what's not, and then being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. We're being distracted from that just all day, every day.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so easy. Like they
Yeah.
make it so easy to be distracted.
Well, they also
Be,
make it illegal. You'll be punished if you don't follow along. There are so many ways that we're kept inside the box. Just looking at the world in the same way, believing the same bullshit, the same lies. Yeah.
yeah. There's, uh, it's just there's so much that ensnares us to the way that we think it should be, and it becomes, you know, like I just mentioned, generational. Right? We're
Yeah.
also taught this from our families.
Yeah.
That this is what you need to do, and this is how it needs to be,
Mm-hmm.
and none of those things ultimately are true.
Right.
It's such a construct of something that someone else came up with to keep us in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so wild. Okay,
It is, and I just want to say on that,
yeah, go
because
ahead.
we are the ones who are creating reality by what we do, what we think, what we say, what our intentions are. We're the ones who are creating this, but those creative powers and our divine potential are being hijacked so that we continue to serve another master, so that we continue to create this slave society. We're the ones who have the power, and it's only when we realize that and then take that and run with it that we can create something different, like a different way of being that's not a top-down power structure that does serve everyone, so that there aren't hungry people, people have places to live. We can take care of each other. We're just being manipulated so into this narcissistic, like solipsistic way of being, where it's what can I get rather than what can I give and how can I contribute. We have the we can, and that's what the book that I just finished writing, New Human of New Earth, that's really what I talk about, that we're the ones we're creating the future.
Yeah.
And we can create it however we like. But if we're influenced by all these things that we've talked about, then we're going to continue to create the same prison, enslaved life.
Yeah. So that is exactly where I was going. I want you to talk about like all of the other work that you're doing too, because you're doing a ton of stuff. And we've talked about a lot of the getting out of the cult mindset. But yeah, talk about some of the books and stuff that you have.
Well, I started writing this book. You were just saying how people's concentration spans down to about like 3 minutes and 3 words. Well, I just finished writing this book, New Human of New Earth. It's 850 pages long.
Oh, wow.
But it is a lot. It was very extremely important for me to write, because that helped me with my healing process. But also I learned a lot more about what's going on in the world, and then also the like body technologies that we have. Like, we have these processes within our bodies that I only know a couple of them, but there must be many, many more. They're what would you call them? Like alchemical, astrological, metaphysical, ethereal processes that go on in our bodies that can actually rejuvenate us. And the yogis have used some of these practices to live for thousands of years. So I've been learning about those. Well, there's actually one's called raising the chrism, and that happens organically every month when the moon is in the same sign as the sun was in when we were born. And when that process comes to completion, and it can easily be destroyed by what you eat, what you do, even anger. But when that process comes to completion, then the body can rejuvenate, consciousness expands and whatever. So I've been writing about that. I call them like body technologies, which includes using our voice, using our body, and like I said, other spiritual technologies like mantras and even doing shamanic journeying. And that's been mainly the focus of my work is okay, so the world is like batshit crazy, and it looks like it's going to hell in a handbasket, so to speak. That's what it appears on the external. That's what we're seeing. But really what's happening is the frequency of light has increased throughout this. So the light that we're receiving through the sun, which is a portal to other great central sun, that frequency of that light has increased. And that's measurable by the solar flares, the solar activity. We're in this massive solar activity at the moment. It peaks and troughs, but basically we're receiving more energy from the sun in a shorter amount of time than we have before. I don't know about recorded history, but let's just say the amount of solar flares, we've got X, C, and M class flares. We're receiving more of those in a month than we did before in a year. The Schumann resonance, which is the if you know about grounding, you know about the Schumann resonance. It's the vibratory frequency of the earth, which is measurable. And it used to be at 7.83 hertz. It now goes up to 50 and stuff like that. So basically the whole frequency of life on earth has increased. So we are living now at a time where there's this higher vibratory frequency, which is the frequency of light, love. And so it's shining a light, or like awakening consciousness, and also it's creating a way that we can now see what's once was hidden in the shadows, the darkness, the corruption, which, think about how corruption's being exposed now. Obviously political corruption, but we've got corruption in like Hollywood, and in the legal, I just followed a case in the Karen Reed case in Massachusetts, where police corruption was straight in everyone's face. Can't avoid it. It's really there. So now is a time of this transition from like a devolution of consciousness, and we're now on the upward path of a evolution of consciousness. And the Hindus recognize these cycles of consciousness evolution, and they're called yugas, Y-U-G-A, and they're 24,000 year cycles. They have other cycles within cycles, those guys. But anyway, so we just moved out of a declining phase of consciousness, and now we're in an upward phase of expanding consciousness. And that's what I talk about in the book too, like to recognize that we are on an evolutionary journey, and here we are like a ground zero where there's a shift. It is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. This is the transition to the new earth, and it's up to us how that's going to go. Like it can keep going down, and it may well do, because there's been so much negative, like violations of natural law. So we sort of have to go through the consequences of those. But at some point, the vibratory frequency of the planet is going to be so high that all those forces that operate in darkness, that use fear and control, they won't even be able to function here. The vibratory, there'll be no fuel, food, or way that they can continue. They just won't. They will at some point. This is what my understanding is, though. At some point, they'll disintegrate. They'll be, what's the word? They just won't even be able to exist anymore. You won't be able to con people. You won't be able to inculcate people. It won't happen. People will be aware enough to know when they're being fooled and controlled. So that's something else I've writing about too. Just it's easy to get caught up in the, oh my God, go into the fear and the anxiety, but to remember there is a bigger picture, and the picture is that we are divine beings, and we are being sourced by light, and that the light is not going, it continues to grow in intensity. It's no going back. There's going to be a time when war isn't going to be an option for conflict resolution. When we do use the resources here in nature to be able to make sure that people aren't hungry and homeless and all that, there will be a time when we take care of each other rather than fight.
Yeah, man, I certainly hope that comes sooner rather than later, because
it's up to us.
Need it.
Right. And you're doing work to contribute to that, and we can all play our own part by making other people aware of what's going on, by speaking truthfully, and even just simply just being a good person, because it's our energy that affects everything. So if we are anxious and scared, and that energy contributes towards the continuation of the dark forces, because that's what they love, that's what they feed off, that's what they want, that's why they do what they do. So if we can step out of those ways of being, then we're contributing to a brighter and better world. It sounds really simple, but that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, I think that, we often forget the simple things that have impact on the world around us and the people around us, and how that can change everything.
Yeah.
We've all experienced that person that walks into the room and everything always goes south, and they're just such a negative influence that everybody feels it. But you also feel that same person that walks into the room and lights everything up, and everything changes. You're so glad to see them. You're so happy to be
Mhm.
around them, and that has an influence, and that influence goes so much further than anything else. Being able to go in there and just have people changed, and their day be better. Well, one of the things that uh I've noticed a lot now, because going to all these doctor's appointments and things like that, is often the people that are there working and that are dealing with whatever, and they may not be the sunniest, brightest, happiest people, but walking up and just being able to smile
Exactly. I
and
was just going to say that. How
and
powerful are we just being able to smile?
yeah, and to give them some kindness and some greeting, you can see immediately just how that changes their entire
Mhm.
demeanor,
Yeah.
and how the day for them completely changes. And they open up, and you can have a conversation, and it's just and that all starts with us.
Yep.
How are we approaching the people around us?
Mhm.
What are we doing to affect their day in a positive way, and to maybe change what may be miserable uh, during this whole season of things that I've been dealing with? There was a particularly low moment, and I was sitting outside, and I was sitting there, and I was for the very first time in a real in probably 30 years, since I was in my teens. I was sitting there, and I was contemplating blowing my brains out. And I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking about it, and I remember thinking, all I need at this moment is one person. I just need one person to say something to me.
Mm.
Like, I need, something, to just like remind me of who I am right now. Because if I don't get that, I don't know that I can continue to go. And so I was sitting there, and it was so strange, because it came from the last place that I would ever believe that it would come from. And I didn't get anything at that moment, but like I went inside, and I laid down, and I took a nap, because I was just feeling so terrible, and worried about everything, and money, and the whole bit. And I'm sitting there, and I woke up, and my mom had sent me a message, and it was a prayer for her son. And she didn't know that I was like, she
Mm.
obviously knew that I had the strokes and everything, but she had no idea that I was struggling through all of this other stuff at the same time, because I was not telling anybody that. And here now I'm telling the entire world about all that. It's funny. But I'm sitting there, and she sends me this, and you don't know this. My mom was my abuser. My mom tried to kill me several times,
Oh God.
and so we all of my early childhood trauma is from her. And so I've dealt with most of my life dealing with hearing all the same things, that I'm worthless, and that I would never amount to anything, that I destroy everything that I do. And that all comes from my mom.
I'm so sorry.
And yeah, it's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
But when I was in the hospital, and I had the stroke, it was my mom who came to see me. My dad was unable to. He was in the hospital himself, but my mom is the one that came from, Philadelphia, from the East Coast, drove with her boyfriend. He told her, said, "Hey, when do we need to leave? I'll get the car." And they left right away, and they came, and they spent 4 days with me in the ICU. And so, I never expected my mom to be the one. And, it was difficult to have her there. It was difficult because I see the attitudes and the narcissism and the bipolar, and I watch that, and I can see her moods. But I also saw somebody that who I thought hated me and wished that I was dead and didn't want to have anything to do with me. I also saw a woman that cared and that loved me and that was scared that I was going through these things. And then in my darkest moment, she's the one that sends me something. And so I messaged her right after that and I said, Mom, you don't know what that meant to me. I needed that. And then I called her the next day and I made sure that I expressed that to her on the phone and just told her, I really needed to hear that at that moment. Uh, and I was so surprised that that came from her. I would have never expected that ever. And I was so grateful for it at that moment. And it's really funny that we don't know where those things come from or what inspires somebody to do that and and to care at that moment, to think about it, no matter all the tumultuous things that have happened in the past. Uh, it was right at the perfect time, and it was right at the perfect moment that we can be that for somebody else. And I think that that is one of the things that I've had to remember is that when that call comes, when we have that feeling, and I need to, hey, I need to say hello to somebody and send them a message and remind them that I care about them. That it's important to do those things because we don't know where they're at in that moment
Yeah.
and what they need. And so, just a simple, she just forwarded me a video and just a simple, smile and a good morning and some sort of concern for the other humans that were around can make all the difference and radically change someone's life. Uh, you know, we were just going through. For those of you that are out here and don't know this story, you should look it up because it's crazy. But we were just talking about this, me and my wife, the other day. Uh, Corey Ten Boom was, in the concentration camps in Germany, and watched many of her family members die there in the concentration camp, and knew the guards and things that were leading people to the gas chambers. And then when, the war ended and they got out, she was out there and happened to see one of the guards and forgave that person. And I've never, like, you know, I don't understand the strength that it must have taken for her to love that person regardless, even though they had done some of the most horrific thing that anybody could ever do, to love them no matter what and to extend that kindness to them. I don't understand that, but at the same time, I don't have to understand that. But it has always been, a story that has reminded me of what we need to do for other people and the love that we need to show other people, no matter what, because we're all humans. We're all here together and struggling through this, and we need to be there for one another. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story about your mom. Yeah, that made me cry too. That was really, wow, what a journey that you've had with her. One thing that helped me not be like wanting to kill, the person who murdered my son was if I've come into this life to learn the lessons, and often that's through some kind of abuse or suffering or betrayal or abandonment, then I have on a soul level contracted these other beings, my mother, my exes or whatever. I've contracted them to play these roles of abusers or whatever we're contracted on some level. So really, for me to be, I have to take responsibility for that. Doesn't mean I have to like them. I certainly don't like what they do. I don't have to go out for lunch with them or ever be friends with them again. But at the highest level, there's kind of, in a way, there's almost nothing to forgive because we've contracted to go through these lessons again. So they're actually playing their role really well. They've really shown up and done a really good job of being an absolute asshole. And so that's, for me, that's how I'm, where I'm at. It's a work in progress. I'm certainly not, all about, I'm not completely forgiving or whatever, but I have a level of understanding that helps me, not be outraged and enraged and not living my life wishing that they, I'm not cursing them or whatever. I'm just, okay, I know, we obviously came here with a plan and it's playing out like this, and get to the point, this is where I can get to, I can actually thank them. Thank you for showing up and playing your role so well, because it's moved me from where I was to, where I am now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Well, is there let everybody know where they can find your stuff too. So let them know where to go.
Well, my book's available on Amazon. And also you can go through my website, which is feelingbetternaturally.love. And on the website, I've got some of my artwork, some of my other writings, and some of the videos from my YouTube channel, which is feelingbetternaturally.love. And I also have a Substack, Feeling Better Naturally.
Nice.
And I'm really while I'm supposed to be promoting and self-promoting, promoting the books and all that, I'm so hesitant to do that because it's really unnatural for me. I'm happy to write the books, but when it comes to marketing and all that, I'm just shit at that. So I really am. It's so unnatural. And I also don't want to really be caught up in the whole social media thing because it's so addictive. I already know I'm screen addicted and I have to take time to step away and go and do something other than screens. So God help those poor people most people are screen addicted, social media addicted, and really I don't really know anyone who's not. So I don't want to add to that by constantly engaging on like Facebook or whatever. So I really just have kept it, I haven't been on there for years now, just keeping it really simple. I don't have a really big online presence, but I do really enjoy doing podcasts and speaking with other people. I love speaking with other people. I'm really enjoying hearing your stories, like, what you've been through and how you're bringing such grace to your healing process and then sharing your wisdom. I love learning from other people like that. So that's why I really like doing the occasional podcasts. And so those podcasts are on my YouTube channel and some of them on my website.
All right. Yeah. So everybody go and check all that stuff out. I think one of the recent statistics, whatever that's worth, is I think it was something like the large majority of people check their Facebook every 9.3 seconds.
Oh God. Here's a scary article that I read the other day. It's from a study by MIT, and the people who use ChatGPT experience cognitive decline over time because you're not using your brain. You mentioned before about the firing of the neurons, neuroplasticity, right? That's not happening when we hand over our creative abilities to something that's artificial. So it's really important to continue to do human things, like read books, like you said, and create art, whatever it is, whatever that is for you, whether it's a painting or cooking or gardening or acting or whatever. It's really important that we continue to do what makes us human, and that's people face to face, make eye contact, be able to have skin to skin contact, if it, in the appropriate environment, of course, make love. We really need to hold on to what it means to us to be human, because that's being supplanted by all this artificial technology, screens technology. So basically my advice is leave the screens aside as much as possible. Get outside, especially like take children outside and play. They need to learn how to play. Children are losing the ability to be able to play. They need to be directed how to play. And play is such an important part of our growth and our learning about how to show up in the world. So that's my advice: just be as human as possible, and in that way, we are creating a beautiful world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and having this conversation, because it is vitally important as we are sitting in this all of these things blowing up around us, to remember what it's like to be human
Mm-hmm.
and how it is to interact with other people and to go out there and really connect with the world around us. Uh, it is the main reason why I create tabletop games, because it is a method to get other people to interact.
Mm-hmm.
I love video games. I play them all the time. But it is so disconnecting,
Yes.
and I want people to have an experience with one another. So
Mm-hmm.
everything that I create forces them to have an experience with one another, whether it is maybe you don't want to hang out with that person and spend time in their basement because they're creepy, or if it's because you have a lot of fun and you want to get around the table and have another experience next week with them. I think that that is important, as we are so completely disconnected from the people around us and the world around us, that we need to spend that time in connection and in fellowship
Yes.
with other people. It is so important.
Completely agree. And thank you for all that you're doing to connect people to each other, and their inner self, their higher power. Thanks, Jeff. Really, thank you for your contribution to the freedom and future of humanity. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. Hold on just a minute. I'm going to do the closing real quick, and then I'll be right back with you. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you got a lot out of that. I know that it was incredible for me, and I think that we really need to take time to understand that each and every one of us has been caught up in the world around us, and we need to look at those prisons that we've put ourselves in and understand, how do we find freedom from that. How do we get liberation from all of those things? So take time, check it out. Make sure that you comment below. Make sure that you subscribe, and then go on there. And next week, when we do the recap episode and we're live, come on there and talk about it, because it is so important how we relate to the world around us, especially right now, as there seem to be all these crazy dividing lines being drawn, and people trying to get us to go one way or the other, and to hate this person or hate that person. Uh, let's have a conversation and try to get to a better place where we are giving that love that people deserve as humans around us all the time, right? So I will see you all next week. Make sure you join us. We're going to recap this episode, and we'll recap our last episode as well, since I skipped out last week. So I will talk to you all soon, and see you then.